Welcome to this third in 3 webinars in the RoboHelp Essentials series. We're going to talk today about merged help. My name's Matt Sullivan, and I am the owner of TechCom Tools. I've got a couple of my credentials there. We'll go through that in a minute. I want to point out at the bottom that Stefan Gentz and I will be co-hosting the Adobe DataWorld 2024 conference. And in fact, here's a QR code that you can use to get to that short link or get to the registration page on Adobe's website. Just a little bit of background on me and some resources for you. If you go to community.adobe.com and you look at the technical communication and learning section, you'll see that there is Captivate RoboHelp FrameMaker, Adobe Learning Manager, and the Experience Cloud community. These are topics that relate to RoboHelp FrameMaker, data, content management, and structured authoring. If you're interested in any of those things, you can post questions about those products there, and those are forums that you will find me on. If you're on those forums, this is how I'll show up. Matt S., TechCom Tools, the guy on the white background there. Apparently, I've got about 145 correct solutions to problems that we've got on those various topics. I also have recorded a number of the new feature videos for both FrameMaker and for RoboHelp. Here's a screen capture on both the FrameMaker and RoboHelp options, and these are on youtube.com/user/Adobe TCS. So this is a great way to find out about those new things that are coming out with each new version of the product. Adobe puts out videos for these, and I help take care of those. What we're going to cover today, going to look at the option that you have to download the demos that I'm going to be using in the webinar today. Going to give you an easy way to download those. You can get your phone out and get your camera, and I'll give you a QR code that lets you just plug in an email address and go from there. Then we're going to define merged help. It's a concept that kind of scares a few people because it tends to be very, it's just something that can be intimidating for people because it requires a lot of very exact connections. So we want to get merge help defined and then go forward and look at the project itself. Then we're going to cover the directory setup. We're going to look at what the overall folder structure is suggested. It's not a mandatory thing, but we're going to look at what historically most people have used to set up in a folder structure and then use RoboHelp projects to fill in the gaps and make sure that all this stuff kind of like all folds into itself and is something that you can navigate logically. We'll look at what you need to do to set up each individual child project. But first, we absolutely need to give credit where credit is due, and that is to the person who gave me the information on merged help probably 10, 12 years ago, Mr. Peter Grange. I don't think any discussion of merged help and the documentation around merged help in RoboHelp would be complete without recognizing the efforts and the documentation of Peter Grange. He is, as you can see, who I would call the godfather of merged help. He is also one of my 3 amigos, one of the experts that when I was getting started with RoboHelp, probably around 2010, 2012. He and a few of his pals were instrumental. All 3 of them are friends, and with any luck, we've got at least one of them, Mr. Peter Grange, in the audience today. I know he was planning on being here. So Peter, well done on the documentation of many, many versions of RoboHelp. You can get an idea of who he is from the bullets there, but indispensable. I have leaned on his documentation to do merged help through probably about a dozen merged help projects, all the way up to a project that contained, I believe, 16 child projects. Worked like a charm, always has. And the trick is to follow in great detail the things that work. So you are free to work out on your own, but it is at your own discretion and probably going to be subject to what I would call snowblindness. And that is that the names, the locations, the relationships between all of these files get very, very tenuous. So if you don't have everything set up, if all your wires are not wired properly, you will probably not get the help that you're looking for, and it will be somewhat difficult, not following these conventions, it will be somewhat difficult to troubleshoot on your own. So again, Peter, thank you so much for everything you've done in the past on that. I hope that this presentation does your topic, your pet project topic, justice. Well, you're probably not going to be able to start and continue with the pace of this presentation because of the technical and the detailed nature of what we've got. I have given you an ability to download that very specific initial structure by going to techcom.tools/merge, and you're free to shoot the QR code with your phone. What it will do is not download the files itself, but it will allow you to sign up. You'll be signing up for my newsletter, and then that will provide the download for you. And so thus you can use your cell phone to do the connection, do the sign up. I promise I don't send out a lot of emails. I probably should send out more, but I will get the files to you. And then if you find that the odd email related to either RoboHelp or FrameMaker, if that's too much for you, you're always free to unsubscribe. So merged help defined. Basically, we're talking about connecting two or more Adobe RoboHelp projects to allow the distributed editing of those projects and to allow publishing of the content, not only as one connected complete system, but then you would also have the option to still put together individual projects and publish them as needed. Or even if you want to stretch it out, you can create more than one merge. Once you get this connected the first time, it makes it a lot easier to modify. And you might want to create a merge that has a different collection of projects. So it creates some modularity with your documentation, and might be something that your audiences would appreciate, or perhaps your various clients would appreciate, being able to reuse entire chunks or swaths of content. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the demo. Basically, there are a number of parts that we're going to address in this webinar. As a result, there may be things that I record before or after, and they may not be linear in how you see them. So if there's any sort of disjointed, if I'm talking about something that seems to not fit chronologically, my apologies for that. This is it's a deep topic, and so I want to make sure that we do it justice. And so I'm going to try and do this as independently and as modularly as we can, and then you'll be able to let me know in the Q&A and after the session how well we did. Let's switch over to RoboHelp. If you haven't already figured it out from this little apple right here, I will be using RoboHelp on the Macintosh. I find that is a lovely way to do things. It really is the same user experience as Windows. It's just that now I don't have to run through a virtual machine on my own personal laptop. So it's a good example of how well RoboHelp works. And if you're doing this same project inside of Windows, it will illustrate how precisely RoboHelp on Windows and RoboHelp on the Macintosh align with each other. All right, first thing we're going to do is look at a file structure. On this starter screen, you can see some of the files that I'll be working with. There is the FinTech News project. Now that is the same sample that you'll find in RoboHelp 2022. It talks about using RoboHelp 2022 at some level. And then I did duplicates of that project to create child 1, 2, and 3. So I'm using this, I've basically split up this project into 3 chunks and a parent in order to show you how the merged help can help me stitch those things back together. Works fine as one project at the size that it is, but if you have something that is much, much larger, this will give you an idea of how you parcel things out and then come back and put them all back together at the end. Let's look at the file structure that is the kind of the underlying thing. It's the thing that I think I'm most grateful to Peter for either creating or at least promoting. So I've got a merged project directory. This can be any name that you want. I just happen to have merged-project. I like to try and make everything lowercase and not to use any spaces or punctuation in those names. So hopefully we've done that all the way through. Primarily, we've got an output directory and we have a source directory. There is nothing in the output directory. This is currently expanded. But in the source directory, we have a few other folders. So in source, then I have parent and I have projects. Keeping something close to this is going to allow you to go back to either my documentation or Peter's documentation or the documentation from Adobe or others. And hopefully this will all align with the same sorts of labels. So even though it's not required, it's a good idea to keep those things the same as the reference material that you're going to be using. Show you the parent. This is simply a RoboHelp project. This project doesn't have any content in it. And so it is just the project itself and then the default folders right in here. You'll probably find that there is buried in here are some graphics and things like that because I did kind of split this away from the original. I made 3 copies of my FinTech project. One is the parent, 3 are children. Speaking of those children, they are in directories called child _1, _2, _3. Again, just a RoboHelp project. We'll take a look at the contents of all of that. But the parent, basically, what the parent is looking for are those 3 child names. So we're going to insert those as child projects into the parent, and then RoboHelp will kind of take the published output from these individual folders and then display it through one start page, basically. As I mentioned before, I've set up a download for you. I think it's about 50 megabytes, so not small, not huge. But the 50 megabyte download has the initial folder structure that we just looked at, and the kind of the stripped out or parsed out RoboHelp projects for the parent and for the 3 child projects. So what you're going to be doing is getting the system that I'm going to open up one at a time. First the child projects to look at those, then the parent, and then we're going to publish the parent and then go back in and look at other stuff. Use that download, you will have not only the starting file structure that I just showed you, but all of the content that goes inside of that in case you want to use this as a practice or an exercise. All right, so we're going to start with child 1. Opening FinTech News Child 1. You're going to find that I've tried to be as direct as possible when I name things. So this FinTech News project, I put this on here so I understand it's child 1. Child 1 sits in the child 1 directory. Child 1 is going to publish into the child 1 folder in the output. So just trying to keep all of my items in a row so that I can keep track of them. You're going to see that the content in this project, I have 3 individual pages, and I have 2 sections. One is called Homepage Options and the other called Human Resources. That's going to be significant because these are the topic pages that I want included in my merged help. I've got a table of contents, and you can see that I've named this FT Child 1, so FinTech Child 1. And again, I've got those 3 projects, and I've got these 2 sections, the Homepage Options and the Human Resources. So that's all good right there, FT Child 1. In the output, I've created a frameless blue. Actually, this is, I believe this one came from Peter from a download that I did. So he had put together an output for this right here. So he had done the initial design and the configuration of this frameless output right here. And I need to have at least one frameless output if my merged help is going to be a frameless merged help. I also need to have one responsive definition for an output preset if my merged help will be a responsive output. It doesn't have to be defined exactly the same. You'll see in the parent that I put together another frameless output, but I have to have a frameless output so that I get the files in the appropriate format, and it can be used by the parent, which is going to publish, among other ways perhaps, into the frameless configuration here. What you may already know about RoboHelp is before you can publish, you have to have a couple of things that are dialed in at a minimum. And so I'm going to give you a list of the things that I like to put in there. Most of them are mandatory, and it will fail if you don't put these things in. But it's possible that a couple of them are optional, and they're just things that I find very helpful and intuitive when I'm setting things up. So in general, not only do I have a title, I'm not too worried about that right there, but I've got the start page as index.html, pretty basic. I want to go into content and recognize that I need to have a default topic. Default topic is one of those things you're going to really need to have. And then you can set all these other things as needed. Layout, I have to have a template. If you don't have a template defined, then RoboHelp is going to just not create or not compile your output. If you don't have the template set up, then you're going to want to choose one from what is existing, or you're going to want to create a new one. All right, so I'm going to go in and close that project and just show that the same thing has to be done on each one of the child projects. And so this will give you a sense of just the naming convention and the way these things all get put together. All right, we're going to open up child 2. Just go through and look at the same thing. We've got FinTech News, Child 2. We have contents that include the knowledge base and marketing. We have table of contents, FT Child 2, knowledge base and marketing inside of the TOC. Going to output, frameless blue nav pane. I've got my title. Got a favicon in there, start page. Content has a default topic. Layout has a template, and we're pretty much home free. Closing out of that one, we're going to go into child 3. Fortunately, this is just very repetitious. We've got our sections in here. So in contents, I've got micro content, software development, and terminology. FinTech News Child 3, table of contents, FT Child 3, micro content, software development, and terminology. That all looks good. Let's go to the output. Doesn't have to be frameless blue nav pane. It just happens to be. It was already in the project. In general, I've got my title. Good idea. Start page definitely needs to be defined. Content, I need to have a default topic. Layout, I need to have a template defined. In frameless blue nav pane, we've got our title, we've got our favicon. We don't have an output path yet. So this means that it's going to I don't have a place to put my output quite yet. So I'm not going to go ahead, I'm not going to be able to generate this project right now. I'm going to circle back around for the output path for all 3 of these things once I get my, my initial structure that's going to come from the parent. So right now, this is not something I can output just because I don't have the output path. I do have my start page. I do have my content and a default topic. The welcome aboard FinTech, I probably want to go through there and look at a different topic inside of here, since we've got all these different things. Let's go with the FinTech terminology here. So we're going to go there, select that so that it's something that's inside the topic. And then we're going to go to layout, and we're going to go to the template and make sure that we've got a template that is set up. I'm going to go ahead and save that change. I'm going to close that project. And then finally, we're going to open up the parent project. The parent project is unique because there is no real content inside of the parent project. You can see all I've got is my default assets directory and some managing and publishing stuff right in here. So there's no physical content inside of here, and that's going to be recommended behavior. So if you have content inside of here, it can create issues with linking from here to other projects or other projects into here. So we're going to keep these separate. And then we're just going to go ahead and use this as a shell. The shell is going to produce not only the table of contents that we need, but it's going to produce all of the locations that we need to publish our other projects into. So we'll look at output. And inside of output, we've got this frameless blue nav pane that we were using before. What I'm going to also do is create a new preset. That new preset will be frameless like the other ones that I'm using. And I'm just going to call this merged output. And I'm going to go ahead and hit done. Inside of merged output, I'm going to have my FinTech news. That's great. Favicon, I'm not really worried about right now. Output path is critical. So we're mentioning with the third child project, we need to have this defined in order to really do anything. Going back into that merged project directory that we reviewed earlier, I can close out of the source, not close out, but collapse that, and then make sure that output is expanded. And you can see in output, there is physically nothing inside the output. So output is the thing that we want to open up and identify. You can see in the tooltip there that it ends in output at the very end of that long string of directories. My start page is going to be index, always a good idea. One of the default start pages that you've got available to you on the web, index HTML, index HTML. Inside of content, I've got a FT merge TOC. In fact, I'm going to go back out right now. I'm going to leave merged output open. I want to look back at my authoring because while I don't have any contents in this project, I do need a table of contents. And the table of contents, I've created one called FT merged TOC. And currently it's blank. Now this is perhaps the key to everything that we're going to be doing right here. We have the FT merged TOC, whatever your name is for that TOC. This TOC needs to identify your child projects. And so when you look in the toolbar up here, we have an insert child project. We're going to navigate, go to your source and your projects. Going to child 1, I'm going to grab the RHPJ and hit open. I'll insert that. I'm going to repeat for the other two projects. Project name, navigate, child 2, right there, insert, navigate, child 3, and insert. Okay, so we got those three. That will be the mechanism that draws that content out and then allows the navigation across the entire project. Now that I've got that done, I will going to go back to my output. FT merge TOC is the name of the TOC that I want. I need to have a default topic. So I'll search for a default content there. I'll go to child projects, FinTech News, Child 1. We'll go ahead and select. So that's going to be the default one that comes up. is the default that we have in FinTech News Child 1. Over to Layout, I need to select a template. I've got these right here. I don't want those in particular. So I'm going to grab this one right in here called Studio because it's significantly different. And we will Studio dash merged so that I end up with a copy of that and something that I can uniquely identify. Go ahead and hit done. Okay, there we go. And we're going to go ahead and hit save. Now it's time to find out if I've made any mistakes. So I'm going to go to my outputs, grab my merged output, and I'm going to publish it. Not going to lie, pretty happy that that happened on the first time. It's always a little bit stressful getting this stuff done, and let me show you why. So when you go into the Finder, and now we look at output, this is the output from that parent project. And along with the index.htm that I really wanted, what I've got is the basics that I would have from my RoboHelp publish. I've also got this merge projects directory right here. And look at this. Merge projects has labels for FinTech News Child 1 and 2 and 3. This gives us the structure that will allow us to look at this one place with all three of these sets of content in place. So now I'm going to go back. Having done that with the merged output, I am going to make sure again that I save and then I close. Going to go back starting with child 1. Go into my output. I'm going to go back to so curiously, my blue nav pane is what I'm going to be publishing. I'm going to go into my output path. And this again is a key point. My output path needs to go into this directory that I just created. So I've got this directory right here. I'm going to hit open. I'm going to double check that output path to make sure that it's exactly what I wanted. And you can see the last directory is FinTech News-Child-1. I believe we're in good shape. Let's find out by going to the Generate Preset. Well, that didn't work out, so I'm going to double check the different things that I've got going on in here. I've got my general, double checking the output path, got a start page, go to content. I don't have a TOC selected, so I'm going to go to FT Child 1. That's probably what it is right there, but then still looking at the default topic. FT Child 1, definitely the default topic is this one right here. I've got some other things going on that probably don't have anything to do with that failure. And then I'm going to go to Layout and Template. I'm going to use Blue Lagoon, Blue Nav Pane. I'm just leaving this here as an example. I'm not publishing into this look. I'm publishing into that studio look, which is, to say the least, significantly different. Let's go back and try and let's do a save first. Always a good idea. I'm going to output and look at that. So the output generation now occurred. Just for grins, I'm going to view it. So here's my FinTech News output for Child 1. And we're going to compare that to what this same thing looks like when we look at it ultimately in the merged help. Back into RoboHelp. FinTech News Child 1 looks to be in good shape. Do a save, do a close, and then rinse and repeat for Child 2. I'm going to go to Output, Frameless Blue Nav Pane, FinTech News. I need an output path. I'm going to take that output path and make sure that my merge projects, I have a child 2, which is roughly speaking empty right now. I'm going to open that up, double check to make sure that my tooltip is appropriate. That's good. I've got a start page. That's good. Go to content. I'm going to grab my TOC, FT child 2. My default topic, let's take that and go to inside a knowledge base, how to use this knowledge base. We're going to select that one so that if I publish this independently, and we'll do that, we're going to publish it into that directory, but if I use it independently, it will still have its own individual start page. So we got that. Let's go to layout. Blue Lagoon nav pane looks good. And we're going to go now to save and double check the publishing of it. Looks good. Now let's go and view it. Interesting that the knowledge base, I had the Blue Lagoon selected, but it kind of went into the studio look. So I'm not even worried about that right now. I'm not going to bother to track that down. But you can see how significantly different it is right there. That was kind of a, to an extent, that was an early reveal. Back into RoboHelp, we're going to go ahead and save and close. Need to set up our third project. Third project comes up. I've got my contents, which include micro content, software dev, and terminology. My table of contents, FT child 3. Go to my output, and in the output, we're going to define blue nav pane. Blue nav pane will have an output path of FinTech News Child 3. Double check that. Looks good. Start page good. Content. Select table of contents, FT Child 3. Default topic, we've already got FinTech terminology, HTM. That looks good to me. This stuff just was already set up as we talked about before. Going to layout, I need to have a template here. Not necessarily studio, but in this case, we're going to have Blue Lagoon, Blue Nav Pane. We'll check that out. Curious to see which one comes up in just a minute. And let's go ahead and hit save. We'll go ahead and generate the FinTech News Child 3 project. Successful. Whether you hit dismiss or not, it'll go away eventually. And then I want to view that. So kind of interesting. I probably made a mistake in child 2 then, because this is obviously my blue rather than the yellowish one that has the what I used for the merged help and what is based on the studio output. Okay, so one final thing here, we basically have this all dialed in, and it's really kind of weird that, or at least I think it's weird, that the first thing that we published was the parent project, and the parent project had those locations for 3 things, but it didn't really have anything in there. Now I'm going to show you that when we go into the already published or the first published project, the thing that was published before we did before we populated these 3 directories, this index file, which was created 3:35, and right now we're about 10 minutes past that. So the merge projects, the date on the merge projects, 3:43. The date on the first project, 3:35, right there. I'm going to go ahead and open up the index.htm. And we have the index.htm FinTech News. And then check this out. We've got, stretch this out a little bit. We've got the welcome aboard topic right here. Now, whether we need to adjust this, we'll go ahead and do that for that and travel planning. But the welcome aboard was the main topic that we wanted as the default. And so it comes up with this as a table of contents, basically, inside of our frameless output. And it's got everything all the way down to my child project for child 3, which is software development and terminology. So this is all working. I organize my files in a way that I can follow. I set up my projects to conform to specific, pretty simple options off of a checklist. I published my parent. That gave me the locations into which my child projects will go. And then I double checked all my projects to make sure that they, 1, would publish to the right place, and 2, they would publish successfully. At this point, I have 3 separate projects. I can send those to 3 different users. They can edit those 3 projects and publish back into those shared or those common directories, the child 1, 2, and 3 directories. I don't need to update my overall project. I can just keep doing the updates into the shell, which is basically my, whether it's my company webpage or my knowledge base, my knowledge portal, whatever you want to talk about. I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up right here. We're going to come back and we're going to talk about some other topics. So we've got our parent project. We've got child projects 1, 2, and 3. And we've got the organization all set up, posting where it needs to inside the merged products or the merged projects. We've got that inside of child 1, child 2, and obviously child 3. We saw before that we have a skin or a layout or a look that is this blue look for the individual projects. This is child 1. We're going to go in and look also at child 2. And then we look at child 3. I do this to remind you that we've got the blue in all 3 of these. But then in the merge project, we chose a different look. We didn't have to, but we chose a different look for everything else. All of these projects, the children and the parent, are all responsive. So we can use this on a phone. We can use it on a tablet, or we can use it as we would imagine on a desktop. This is really just to show you that the format itself is fairly flexible, that we just have to have the files available, but the formatting doesn't necessarily have to go with it when you go to Merged Help. That in itself is an advantage, but we can also choose individually what we want to do with these child projects. So I'll go back to child 1. We'll go to Output. And we have our output presets, including frameless blue nav pane. Now, just as a reminder, this is just a label. So the frameless blue nav pane has layout, which is this template, Blue Lagoon, blue nav pane. So if I did something crazy and I go through and choose from my template the white nav pane, that would be confusing. Or I could go and choose a different template altogether. So I can choose any of these, including the oceanic, the dark, etc. I stayed away from the studio because that's the one that we used for the merged help. So I didn't want to clutter that up. But the top navigation also looks a little bit like our studio, just a little bit different, different navigation in there. You can already see that this would get confusing. So I don't want to necessarily take the output that I already have, this FinTech News, Child 1. This right here, all of this information in here is my output from Child 1. I'm going to leave that alone because I want that to be part of my merged help. If I want to deliver this Child 1 project on its own, then I can go out and do something entirely new. So instead of using the output that we've already got here, I'm going to create a new output preset. I'm going to make it frameless. Make it independent output and hit done. Okay, so now I know that this is going to be my independent output. Notice that I didn't name it based upon the skin or the template. Instead, I've now got something called independent template. And now I can go through and choose layout. And I can choose my template. And I can choose a new one. And we'll go to dark. We'll hit done. we will need to put in all the things that we needed to put in before. So I'm going to go back to General, fill out the other options here, or the other details. So we're going to go first in General. We're going to choose an output path. And so in samples, I've put in another directory called child1 independent output. I'll select that folder and hit open. And now I've got that in my samples just as I do my merged help output. So I put them close. They don't have to be close. They can be different servers. You can choose publishing options, whatever you want. I'm just putting these close to keep it as simple as possible this afternoon. I'll leave my start page as index. Moving to content. Make sure you've got a table of contents specified, that you have a default topic. Again, I'll choose Welcome Aboard FinTech News. This is just the first page that shows up in my system when it opens. Back in layout, I've got my dark template, so I've got a different look and feel here. Saving my file. Let's make sure that it generates. Okay, so I hit my minimum requirements that I needed to output my project. I'll go now and view it. And here we have FinTech News Child 1. It's got that different logo. It's got the different feel. So it's kind of like Studio, but a darker kind of a coffee look to it. And as long as I'm happy with this, I can go ahead and repeat this process as needed for Child 2 and for Child 3. And so now I've got content that goes into my merged help output, stays up to date there. I can make changes to that individual project, and I can also publish to the independent output for whatever stakeholder just needs a portion of that content. Fortunately, today we still have time to show you how to create an entirely different type of output for our merged help. We showed you how it works for the frameless output. Now you're going to see how similar that is when we set up an output for responsive HTML5. First thing I need to do is go into my parent project. Inside the parent project, we're going to go to Output. In Output, along with all of the frameless output, we're going to go ahead and create a new layout. That preset is going to be responsive HTML5. We're going to call this output-html5. Remember, we already had an output directory, so we need to have a unique name to hold the HTML5. Ideally, you might have had output-frameless and output-html5. So there's our HTML5 output. We're going to put in all of our minimum requirements. So we're going to make sure that we've got the title in there. We've got our output path. I've already created a folder called output HTML5. That's going to be just kind of a sibling to the output directory that we were using for everything else. Just as a reminder, we'll leave that selected now and then hit open. Going to go ahead and save that. Start page will remain index.htm, no problem there. It's a different directory as the other one. Going to content, we're going to choose a default topic. Remember that earlier we already set up our TOC to include these 3 child projects, so they're already there for you to use. Now within child projects, I'll do the same thing as I did before. I'll just choose child 1 and hit select. So that will pick up the start page from my first child TOC, the default page from that topic or from that project. Inside of layout, we're now looking at our responsive HTML5 choices. Since we don't have one in our template list yet, we're going to click on the find here. And then we're going to choose from the things that we have available. I will go ahead and I tend to start with the charcoal gray. So we're going to use that right there. And charcoal gray dash merged. That way, if I change my mind about something, I can always go back to charcoal gray, or I can grab this and I can use it again with another project down the line. So charcoal gray merged. Going to hit save. And let's see if we generate. Always like it when it works the first time. We're going to go through and look at the view. My project comes up, but not surprisingly, there's no content in here. We have yet to create the individual project outputs that are going to populate this parent merged help setup. So we've got to go ahead and go back into RoboHelp. Having created that, we should be good to go. We don't need to regenerate this project unless we make changes to the overall structure of the parent that will be the container. And maybe we change the look and the feel of something in the parent project or in the overall look, and then that would mean we would have to go through and do the publishing again of the parent. We'll go ahead and close this project. Now we just have to go into the child 1 project. Inside of output, we're going to recognize that we only have the frameless. We're going to create a new output that will not be frameless. That's going to be responsive HTML5. And we're going to call this merged HTML5. We see it right there with a different icon. We need a title, we need an output path. Our output path is not going to be where it was before. It's going to be in the output HTML5. And just like we saw in the other output, once we generated the output HTML5, it gave us the structure that we need for merge projects, included those 3 projects that we'd already identified as child projects. That lets me go into FinTech News Child 1 and hit open. I've got my start page. We're looking good. We go to content. We've got our FT Child 1 TOC. That's great. We need a default topic. Default topic will be welcome aboard. Go to layout. Templates, we don't have any. We go look for a new one, and we've got charcoal gray among the choices right here. I'm going to go to instead the Azure blue. And again, that is just to show you that you don't have to choose the exact same one. You just need responsible HTML responsible. You need responsive HTML5 to pour into the place where you're going to access it from the merged help, the overarching merged help. So Azure Blue looks good. Just need that to be able to generate. We're going to go ahead and save. We're going to view. My mistake there. I'm going to go ahead and generate so I don't have to look past that because I'd have to go back and view anyway. Now I can view now that I've generated, and we get our Azure Blue with the same content. So significantly different look and feel from the parent HTML5, and certainly a different look and feel from the Studio frameless output and the Blue Lagoon frameless output that we saw in the previous examples. That's looking good. We're going to go and save and close. We need to repeat those 2 steps, or repeat those steps for these 2 projects rather. So we go to child 2, go into output, create a new output. It'll be responsive HTML5. And we're going to do Can't remember exactly what I did. I think it was something close to that. Merged HTML5. In merged HTML5, we're going to make sure that we have our title, that we have our output path. Output path is going to be child 2. Start page, leaving it its index. Content, we have our table of contents. We need a default topic. In the default topic, believe we used how to use this knowledge base. Inside of layout, we're going to select a template and we're going to choose Azure Blue. Just for consistency, not for any other reason. Let's go ahead and hit save. Make sure that it generates. View it to confirm that it comes through as Azure. Save the project and close it. Coming around the final stretch here, we're going to go into child 3. You could probably do this on your own right now if you had to. We're going to go into the output. Check to see that we don't have an HTML5. Give yourself an HTML5. Go ahead and hit done. Check in the minimum details. We do have a title. We need an output path. Very critical. We're going to go into FinTech News Child 3, hit open. We have a start page. Content, we need a TOC. We need a default topic. Going into software development or terminology. I believe we did software development, and let's just choose that software development right there. Okay. Finally, with layout, we're going to choose a template, again for consistency. Choose the same one we chose for the other 2 child projects, and we are going to save. Our output generation is successful. That's fantastic. We double check it to make sure that FinTech News Child 3 develops the way that publishes the way that we are expecting. We've got that. All 3 showed up in the blue or the Azure template right there. We look at FinTech News. FinTech News is still spinning around right here because we haven't reloaded everything. So without publishing, we're going to take this right here and we are going to refresh the window. And look at that. Welcome aboard FinTech News. We've got all of our, I believe it was the 3 pages, and the first 2 sections were from memory, the child 1 topics, the next 2 knowledge-based marketing, and then in project 3 we had micro content, software development, and terminology. If it wasn't that exactly, it was pretty darn close. The coolest part was not that I have a bad memory, but indeed that we did not have to regenerate the parent project in order to see this. All we had to do was refresh to get the most current information off of the server, and the parent project was taking care of the merge, and it was going out and looking for everything and bringing it in. And there you have it. We're just at about 1 hour, so that seems like the perfect time to wrap things up. Very much appreciate you taking your time to learn how all of this works. Merged Help is incredibly useful for those people that have lots of projects and need to convert those into a single output. Not necessarily convert, but to deliver those as a single output. As a reminder, this is my 3rd of the 3 RoboHelp Essentials topics that we did the webinars on. The first one, unleashing the power of conditional output, you can get to by looking at the straight YouTube link, or you can grab your phone and you can hit this QR code. The second was about creating truly customizable help content using conditional filters. So if you want to check that out, feel free to write down that ever so long YouTube code, or just snap it with your camera and you can get the QR code and jump straight there. And in case I can be useful in any way, here is my email address, matt@techcomtools. Below that is a link that you can use to book short periods of time with me to get answers to sophisticated questions. Also, we've got reminders on the URL for the Adobe forums, community.adobe.com, as well as the posted videos for the Adobe TCS channel. This will be up there shortly. And if you're interested in finding out more about what I do and what I can give to you, go ahead and go to learn.techcomtools.com, snap that QR code. And of course, you can get to that address as well by going just to techcomtools.com. At this point, if we have any questions left in the chat, I'll be answering those as long as I can. If you've got more questions, please put them in either the Q&A pod or in the questions pod, and I will answer them as I can. If this is up on YouTube and you're watching it after the fact, please add comments there, and I'll try and get back and reach out to you directly via the YouTube comments section as well. Thanks, everybody.